Welcome to your lecture about quotation marks, modifiers, and punctuation. We've covered a lot of information over the past few weeks. You should be proud of your accomplishments. We'll begin this week by discussing modifiers, and then we'll move on to quotation marks, commas, and other types of punctuation. Are you ready to get started? Let's begin. Misplaced modifiers are defined as words that, because of awkward placement, do not describe what the author intended them to describe. Here are a few examples of misplaced modifiers. Lex brought his mother dinner, who was tired and needed rest. Does the sentence above sound a bit funny to you? The sentence reads as though it was the dinner that was tired and needed rest, when really we can assume it was Lex's mother. Misplaced modifiers are descriptions that are not placed next to the thing they describe. In this case, we're discussing Lex's mother, so the description about her being tired needs to be placed next to her. Look at this. Lex brought his mother, who was tired and needed rest, dinner. Here's another example. Megan took her cat to the vet, which had fleas and needed treatment. The sentence above sounds like it was the vet who had fleas and needed treatment, when it was really the cat. Hopefully, anyway. We need to move the description of the cat so it is next to the cat. Megan took her cat, which had fleas and needed treatment, to the vet. Do you see how we made the sentence read much more clearly just by changing the wording a bit? We didn't even have to add anything new. Now that we've talked about misplaced modifiers, let's move on to dangling modifiers. Dangling modifiers are descriptive words that open a sentence but do not describe what the author intended them to describe. Standing in the pool, my cell phone rang. This sentence sounds like the cell phone rang while it was standing in the pool. That's obviously not correct. So how should we change it? We need to make the sentence clear so the reader understands what's going on. Your textbook states that there are a few things you should do when you spot a dangling modifier. They include 1. Place the subject within the opening word group. Let's go back to the example. While standing in the pool, my cell phone rang. The subject of this sentence is the cell phone, so if we place the cell phone in the opening word group, the sentence should be clear. Take a look. My cell phone rang while I was standing in the pool. 2. Place the subject right after the opening word group. While I was standing in the pool, my cell phone rang. Do you see how much clearer the sentence became after I was added to it? You should always ask yourself who when you read a sentence that is confusing because of a dangling modifier. In the example above, after reading while standing in the pool, my cell phone rang, you should ask yourself who was standing in the pool. In this case, it was pretty obvious that the speaker was standing in the pool and not the phone. Moving on from modifiers, let's spend some time with quotation marks. According to your textbook, there are 2 reasons to use quotation marks. 1, to set off the exact words of a speaker or writer. 2, to set off the titles of short works. You should always use quotation marks when you need to show that someone is speaking. For example, I think I'll go to the store tomorrow, said Bethany. I need to buy some milk and cookies. Do you see how the quotation marks show the words that Bethany said? Another thing to remember about quotation marks is that they start at the very beginning of a sentence and end at the end of the sentence. You should always end your sentences with your quotation marks. Here's an example. Alan is really annoying me today, Terrence complained to his neighbor. Do you see how the comma is bolded in the sentence above? That's meant to show you that the comma should always go inside the quotation marks. It would be incorrect to write a sentence this way. Alan is really annoying me today, Terrence complained to his neighbor. Do you see how the quotation mark is before the comma? That's a big no-no. An easy way to remember this rule is to simply consider how the sentence looks. Doesn't that comma look awkward hanging outside the quotation marks? It simply seems to fit more neatly inside of it. It's important to note that when you're using indirect quotations, you do not need to use quotation marks. This means that if you're simply reiterating something that somebody else said, you don't need to put the words in quotations. Here's an example. Leroyce told me that restaurant has great service. In the sentence above, it's not necessary to put anything in quotations because we're not directly quoting Leroyce. If we were directly quoting Leroyce, we would use quotations like this. That restaurant has great service, said Leroyce. Quotation marks are also used for titles of short works, such as essays, stories, articles, and chapters. For example, please turn to Chapter 8, titled Living with Illness, in your book. Please read the essay, In My Words. Did you read the article in the New York Times titled U.S. Foreign Policy in Iraq? Quotation marks are used to make certain words or phrases in a sentence stand out. For example, did you know that the word fruit has 4 definitions in the dictionary? Do you see how the quotations help make the word fruit stand out? It's necessary to put the word in quotes so the reader understands which word you're talking about. Lastly, you should use single quotations when you're writing a quotation within a quotation, like this. Have you read the article, Living Green in Today's World, in the paper today? Chloe asked. Quotation marks can be used for many different purposes. Please consult your textbook for a more comprehensive list of the rules about quotations. Now it's time to learn about the punctuation mark that is probably used incorrectly the most, the comma. Certainly you use commas on a daily basis, but are you using them correctly? There are 6 uses of the comma. Can you believe it? Here they are. 1. To separate items in a series. I need to buy granola, yogurt, and soy milk at the market today. 2. To set off introductory material. Late for class, Cynthia scrambled for a seat in the back row. 3. On both sides of words that interrupted the flow in a sentence. Libby showed up late, her car had broken down yet again, and brought the chocolate cake we were all waiting for. 4. Between 2 complete thoughts connected by and, but, by, for, or, nor, so, yet. I cannot go to the party, but I can go to the after party. That guy seems friendly, so he must like me. 5. To set off a direct quotation from the rest of a sentence. Billy said to me yesterday, I'm sick of living in the U.S. I'm packing my bags and moving to Jamaica. 6. For certain everyday material. I could go for Thai food right now. Leah, are you going to come with us? This party is so boring. Let's get out of here fast. As you can see, there are a lot of instances when you should use commas. Please review each of these examples carefully and spend some time reading about commas in your text to be sure that you have mastered the material. Now that we've gone over quotation marks and commas, let's explore other types of punctuation marks. Next, we'll talk about colons, dashes, hyphens, parentheses, and semicolons. A colon is used at the end of a complete statement to introduce a list, a long quotation, or an explanation. I have the following items packed in my suitcase: socks, tank tops, jeans, and magazines. When my neighbor asked me if I took her hairdryer, I told her, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never seen your hairdryer before in my life. I can give you excellent directions to Los Angeles. Take Highway 1 the whole way down. That way you can drive along the coast. A semicolon is used to mark a break between 2 complete thoughts, or to mark items in a series where the items themselves contain internal punctuation, such as commas. I do not want to go to the mall today. Last week we spent all day searching for dresses, and they were all hideous. Lainey's favorite movies are Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, starring Macaulay Culkin, Scarface starring Al Pacino, and School of Rock starring Jack Black. A dash is used to signal a pause longer than a comma, but not as complete as a period. Use a dash to set off words for dramatic effect. The lecture wasn't too bad at all, for the part I was awake. Irina said she wants her wedding to be quaint, upscale, and fancy. In other words, expensive. Leo drove his gray car, spouting oil and gurgling, up the freeway. Parentheses are used to set off extra or incidental information from the rest of the sentence. Use parentheses sparingly, as they often break the flow of ideas you're delivering. Larissa Spinkter, a professional ballerina, spent all night dancing on her tiptoes. Benjamin returned to Brazil, where he is from, for the summer. We're going to wrap up this lecture by going over hyphens. A hyphen is used with 2 or more words that act as a single unit, or to divide a word at the end of the line. Her story was mind-boggling. That book is easy to read. You should also use a hyphen to continue a word. For example, if you're typing on a typewriter or handwriting, and you get to the end of the page but don't have enough room to squeeze in a word, you would use a hyphen like this. Monica went to the store yesterday. She bought bananas, dark chocolate, nuts, berries, and almonds. Do you see how we use the hyphen after the AL to show that the word is not finished yet? An important note to remember is that you can only break a word at a syllable. Look at the example above. The noun almonds has 2 syllables. The hyphen appears after the first syllable, which is all, and the second syllable would be monds.